Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome to the periodic table. This has always been a little pet project of mine that I've wanted to do, which is to organize everything in terms of periodic elements. Now, obviously, Gregtech doesn't have every single element in the entire world, but it's certainly got enough of them to slowly start to fill it out. And because of that new system, I've started slowly emptying out our reserves of crushed ore, and started exporting all of the finished products, that being the copper, dust, cobalt, and gold, from copper processing straight to the periodic storage. And that's why the ore processing subnet now looks pretty bare. All of the pure ores have been exported out, leaving only the composites, things like phosphates, uraninite, salts, and more, which has significantly emptied all of these drives. Most of them were red, and now they're green. I've also slowly been replacing all of our old centralized power system with flux point into converters. This just seems to be more convenient and easier to set up. And as you saw in the beginning as well, I've automated the flux dust, which has been slowly building up, and we already have 3,600. And in today's episode, we're going to make some big progress. We're going to make some more big machines, big circuits, and if we're lucky, even bigger power. And if that all sounds good to you, you know what to do. Buttons are down below, and enjoy the episode. So let's start small today, and then we can get bigger. Let's look at circuits. Circuits are always a great place to start. Our next tier is going to require these qubit CPU wafers. There's two recipes to make them. There's the InGap method and the QuantumI method. And we're going to use InGap. It's actually quicker. Despite the fact that the recipe takes 60 seconds compared to 45, these are chemical bathing, and that's just too much effort. We use much less radon in this method, but we do use some indium, but that's fine. So if we run this at insane voltage, we're actually going to be able to do this every 15 seconds, and we'll probably put a passive buffer on these. But then we need our IV circuit assembler, which is fantastic, and that will get us the cheapest EV tier circuits. So let's set some recipes and get going. So here we are back again in the clean room with some new pieces of the puzzle that we're going to stitch together. So we'll first work on the qubit CPUs, and then we're going to replace the HPIC chemical reactor. There's a few things I want to update. The first one is, for our outputs, I want to see a physical buffer. So we're going to use a ULV output bus to only have a single stack of output available. We're going to place a storage bus on one of these cables, set to extract only, and then we're going to place a framed drawer, and then a downgrade. Effectively, that's going to mean we can only store 64 items in that drawer. Similar to our current wafer wall, we only want to be storing 64 of these circuits. We have this chemical reactor level limited, so I'm not worried about it at all anymore. And we, as much as I want to have another one, it just doesn't look like it's going to fit along here. A brief reminder on the recipe we're going to use. We're going to import nano CPU wafers, InGap, and radon to make our qubit wafer. So let's have two ULV input buses so we don't buffer too much, and then an LV input hatch, and then the final chemical casing. Done. All right, interfaces, nano CPU wafers, indium gallium phosphide, and radon. So because this is already set up, we plug this in and it'll start working. Boom, done. 4 seconds at LUV. Very exciting. And I know it's bad, and I know it's not ideal, but I love using crafting cards. It's just so easy to be lazy. And now with that, let's fix HPICs. Well, that's all rewired. It's just going to take some smelting of the vanadium gallium to start crafting. So there we have it. We've got our qubit CPU wafer made. Let's start requesting some circuits. All right, let's see. Cheapest EV circuit. Success. Well, let's just request the rest and see how we go. So IV circuit, LUV circuit, and ZPM circuit. All right, we'll let those craft away in the background. And a short wait later, we actually have all of the quantum processors now. Beautiful quest page unlock. So there's actually lots of things we can do with the ZPM circuit. None of it we can do at the moment, of course. So, yay. But let's start going big. So I want to make the large assembling factory and the large circuit assembling factory, which again is just some IV tier components. So the circuit assembler is 3 tall and takes tungsten steel, large scale assembling. Yeah, not too bad. And the regular assembling factory is also 3 tall. So I think that means we can fit the circuit assembler in the clean room, just nicely up here, I think. And the assembler is 9 blocks wide, so I don't think there's any good spot for me to put this. Except maybe here, I guess. This could work. I'll just have to cut down this tree. I hope nothing goes wrong when I cut down this tree. I am a little nervous. But before we get into that, I actually think we're starting to run out of power. It looks like, yeah, we're slowly burning through our power, so let's just make more solar panels. Well, this shouldn't take too long. Let's make another 200. I don't know why I expect that to work. It's literally never worked. Well, let's try that again. Okay, still missing sodium persulfate, so let's give that a break for now and start requesting some large-scale assembler casings. I have no idea. I haven't done the math. Let's just do 200 and see how it goes. That's got to be cheap as. Let's just set the recipe for the assembling factory and the circuit assembling factory. So let's slap those in here. And I think we might have to change the recipes for our IV components as well. Where are they? Probably should have organized these, I'm not going to lie. No, I think that's the only one that takes circuits. Okay, so because we got new circuit tiers, we can just replace these with the cheaper ones. Just like that. So here we go. We can get the large circuit assembler and the large assembling factory. Those are a lot cheaper than I expected. And now more waiting. So I've got all the equipment ready to build the large assembler. The first of our large-scale multi-blocks. But I'm nervous. I'm really worried about cutting down this tree. I do not want to irritate whatever is growing this vine. It doesn't look like it's connected to the vine, so hopefully that's alright. Let's just go ahead and cut it down. What is that? What's going on? Did you guys hear that? I can't see anything happening. Phew. Okay. It looks like we're going to be fine for now. Thank goodness for that. I was really, really worried. So let's just clear this area. Raise this up by 1. And now we've got a nice large canvas to build our assembler. So let's do that. So we've got a large multi-block now, the large assembling factory. But why did we make a multi-block? We could have just had a bunch of smaller ones. Well, I'll tell you, there's 2 reasons. The first is the parallel control hatch. These can go up to parallelizing 256 recipes per craft. That is an insane amount. Like, an insane amount. And the second is, what's behind me now? We can have 8 input buses on different circuits for different crafting recipes and parallelize it all at the same time. We can also have, for now, 9 fluid inputs, which is fantastic. And in our old little automation wall here, we have 1 low voltage assembler running circuit 8. We've got a medium voltage running circuit 6, a high voltage running circuit 4, an extreme voltage running circuit 1, and an insane voltage running circuit 1 as well. And with this setup down below here, we should be able to automate all of our recipes. Hello, cow. With just 1 machine, cutting down on power and infrastructure, which is fantastic. We love efficiency. So I'm going to move all the recipes over, and I'll see you back in a tick. And with all the patterns moved over, it feels like there's only one thing to do. Let's just request another 100 solar panels and just see how long it takes. Yeah, I don't know. Should be fun, right? I'm just a little cuckoo for solar. While we've set up our assembling factory, let's set up our circuit assembling factory in the clean room. So circuit assembling factory is a little bit oblong, which is upsetting for the symmetry of the clean room, but I suppose we'll just have to make do with what we've got. It's also important to note with these 2 blocks, the circuit assembler and the assembling factory, if you right click, they can only have 1 energy hatch, so you can't overclock these like the other ones. It's beautiful, isn't it? A large circuit assembler. Now we don't actually have to create small blocks. All we need to do is upgrade our energy hatches, and we have upgraded the tier. And I'm not quite sure if the parallel control hatch works on this block. I haven't had great success with it so far, but I'm sure one day it'll work. One day. The parallel control hatch on the large assembling factory does seem to work with recipes, such as the SMD components. I'm not entirely certain why, but these seem to be able to be bulk crafted, but other things not, so, you know. But now let's have a look at the final challenges in the IV quest page. We've actually completed most of it, and there's one chemical process to go. And that is PBI. PBI is possibly the most frustrating one just because there's so many steps that are completely useless in every other case. Or at least I find PBI annoying specifically for things like diphenyl isophthalate, which requires you to create phthalic acid, which has a single use, and that is to make diphenyl isophthalate. That's it. So you go through a production chain of making phthalic acid just for one thing. It just feels like a waste. There should be more uses. But also not listed anywhere in this quest page is another chemical that we need to make, and that is polyphenylene sulfide. And that is because every single cable above LUV now requires a thin sheet of polyphenylene sulfide to be coated. And so let's be quick about it and make our polyphenylene sulfide, and then let's move on to PBI, shall we? We've got enough chemical reactors here to recreate Breaking Bad. So all this is going to be pretty easy. The first step here is we're going to be making dichlorobenzene, which requires benzene and chlorine. So let's just import some benzene and import some chlorine, and we should be good. All done. The next step is going to be sodium sulfide. Super easy as well. We'll import sodium and sulfur. So importing sulfur and importing sodium. Done. And the final step is going to be bringing that all together. So we're going to bring in our sodium sulfide. We'll bring in dichlorobenzene and oxygen. Bringing in all that together should make us our chemicals. And since dichlorobenzene only has one other use, and that is to make phenol, we're just going to put a storage bus on there. Sodium sulfide as well has no other uses. Those would be interfaces. So storage buses, set to extract only. And then our final processor here is going to export salt and polyphenylene sulfide. So ME interfaces are hooked up. We've now imported everything. We just need to check circuit conditions. So no circuits there. Dichlorobenzene is circuit 2. So we're just going to need to place an import bus on the dichlorobenzene reactor. We can turn it inwards so it doesn't look anything, and set to circuit 2. So let's finish these reactors and plug them in. That will just be 2 coils, and then filling in the rest of the casings. So how we'll power everything is we're just going to use wireless power. So into a 16 amp converter. I think that's the wrong way. Yes, that's how we do it. And then we'll just run an IV wire, and we'll just place an EV transformer, make it the right way, and plug it in. Okay, now this should work. So let's just... Okay, so we had a little bit of an issue there with the chemical reactors not forming multi-blocks when they have a double shared coil, and that makes a little bit of sense. And I don't think I'm going to have the coil on the top. I think I'll place it there on the side so we can have a nice smooth black top. And now all it should take is some Braintech Aerospace Advanced Reinforced Duct Tape FAL84 to get the machines working. So dichlorobenzene. Yes, it actually has 2 outputs, so we're not going to be able to use our storage bus. That's fine. So we can try our fluid locking again and see how that goes. So we'll put an interface on the hydrochloric acid, and then we will storage bus the dichlorobenzene. Extract only, and a covered cable. Done. So that was actually really fast. I think because dichlorobenzene, we're running it at EV, so it takes 1 tick to make a bucket of dichlorobenzene. So let's plug in our sodium sulfite, 3 ticks. Yeah, nice and quick. And then polyphenylene sulfide, 3 seconds to make a bucket. I think it would be prudent to add a storage bus set to bidirectional for polyphenylene sulfide as well, just so we don't overfill our... Oh, where's it gone? Okay, well, let's restart the chemical reactor. Yep, polyphenylene sulfide is being made, and it's being imported into the tank. Beautiful. All right, let's fluid lock it, and we'll just buffer up enough of that. And buffer we have. We've accidentally managed to store 8 million buckets. Sorry, 8 million millibuckets. It's 8,000 buckets. Whoops. And funnily enough, that actually completely drained our chlorine tank, so we have no chlorine in the base, which isn't great. So let's set up the recipes for the polyphenylene sulfide. We're going to auto solidify sheets, and then in the bender we can bend those into foils, and then we'll just auto fluid solidify polyphenylene sulfide. And that's as simple as placing an interface, adding a pump for import, setting the export to the top, setting polyphenylene sulfide, and getting an ingot mold. So we can place that in the fluid solidifier, and it will... Oh, those are ingots. I said plates and grabbed ingots. That was smart. How about we actually get a plate mold? Then that can go in the solidifier. We can grab a storage downgrade. There's one already in there. And so then we'll add a copper upgrade as well. and that'll allow us to buffer 512, which is 2048 cables to coat. In the bender, we'll place our pattern, and now we can just check if we can request it. Always forget this, click partition storage to add polyphenylene sulfide to our list. Now we can request it. There we are. I actually don't think polyphenylene sulfide has any other uses. So 0 other uses for polyphenylene sulfide except coating LUV and above cables. And speaking of processes that only have a single use, let's make phthalic acid. The recipe for phthalic acid we're going to use is going to be our dimethylbenzene reaction. And there is a simpler way of making it with naphthalene and sulfuric acid and potassium, but I haven't set up the processes for naphthalene yet. But I do have 8,000 buckets of dimethylbenzene, so having that into 8,000 buckets of phthalic acid is going to be great. But all we have to do is make this potassium dichromate, which first requires chromium trioxide, which is just chrome and oxygen. That's just one input bus, one input hatch, chrome and oxygen. And that's just one output bus. So potassium dichromate takes in saltpeter and chromium trioxide and outputs a dust and a fluid. So, 2 input buses, interfaces, saltpeter, and chromium trioxide, and then 1 output hatch, 1 output bus. And finally, phthalic acid. This is 2 fluid inputs and a item input. So we'll use our EV non-uppal input hatches and an input bus, interfaces, oxygen and dimethylbenzene, and then potassium dichromate, and 2 output hatches. So chromium trioxide only has 1 use, so storage bus on extract only. Potassium dichromate is also a 1-use item, so our item bus can have a storage bus on it, but our output hatch, nitrogen dioxide, has many uses and we don't want it to limit this chemical reactor, so let's send that back into the system. And phthalic acid and water, we have infinite water, so we can just send that back into the system, and phthalic acid we will have a tank for. Chromium trioxide can be made at MV, that's fine. Potassium dichromate is a high voltage recipe, and that's EV, so we'll run everything at EV then. 3 EV energy hatches. Alrighty, so let's finish up these chemical reactors. Okay, so let's see, can we make our chromium trioxide already? Beautiful, 6 ticks. Yep, there we are, confirmation that we're making chromium trioxide. Alright, let's have a look at potassium dichromate. There's confirmation that we're making potassium dichromate, and we're also able to get rid of our nitrogen dioxide. So let's set a storage bus up already for phthalic acid into a super tank, and we can have that run before we start the chemical reactor so we don't void any fluids. So here we go, let's make some phthalic acid. We need 18 buckets of oxygen, and we've only allowed it to have 16. There's a really easy solution for this. Let's just upgrade to an IV non-uppal input hatch. And there we are, so let's replace the EV one with an IV one. And there we go. So 45 seconds per, is 18 buckets? Per 9 buckets, okay. Not bad at all. Beautiful. So that is step 1 of our polybenzimidazole recipe. But before we get to doing more of that, I have just noticed that we have a tank of sulfur dichloride on our distillation tower, and I'm not entirely certain how that got there. So let's fix that. And what we can do is we can just output the tank into an interface, and that'll just put it into the system. And then we'll just upgrade that pipe, and it's done. Then we can place our tank back and actually let the end-to-air distillation continue to run. So, behind me right now are all the chemical reactors we're going to need to finish off PBI, including a mixer, which isn't shown. So let's start simple. Diphenyl isophthalate is going to be phenol, sulfuric acid, and phthalic acid. And that needs to be at IV, so IV energy hatch, and 1 EV input hatch. Interface, and set the filters. All done. And 2 MV output hatches for the 2 fluid outputs. Now, let's go to chlorobenzene. You'll be shocked to know that chlorobenzene is just benzene and chlorine. And all of these can be done at EV, so let's just make sure they have EV energy hatches facing down. So 1 non-uppal input hatch, benzene and chlorine, 1 input bus for the circuit, which is circuit 1, and 2 output hatches. Next up is nitrochlorobenzene, which is going to take nitration mixture and chlorobenzene. So again, very simple, 1 hatch. Interface, nitration mixture, and chlorobenzene. And as well, 2 output hatches. So the final recipe is dichlorobenzidazine, and that's going to take nitrochlorobenzene, hydrogen, and copper. So we're going to need 1 input hatch. Actually, we're going to need the IV input hatch. So let's request an IV input hatch. That took a little bit, but here we are. So an IV non-uppal input hatch, and we are looking for nitrochlorobenzene and hydrogen. So nitrochlorobenzene and hydrogen. And this has 1 output, so just 1. Also, can't forget about the input bus for copper dust. Well, that's not the right copper dust. That's the right copper dust. So second to last is going to be diaminobenzidine, which is going to take dichlorobenzidazine and ammonia with some zinc. So like all of these, we have an EV input hatch, an interface, dichlorobenzidazine with some ammonia, input bus, interface. Actually, we don't even need an interface, it's not consumed. So let's just remind ourselves to put zinc in there. And 2 output hatches, and the piece de resistance, PBI, which is just a mixture of the 2 and spits out some phenol. So, EV input hatch, interface, diphenyl isophthalate, diaminobenzidazine, and 2 output hatches. It really is that simple. Simple. And let's just quickly check if we have any nitration mixture being made anywhere, and it looks like we don't. So we'll request an EV mixer. Not sure why it's decided to request nanoprocessors, that's a bit strange. But either way, here we are. This seems like as good a spot as any for nitration mixture. Let's just check that it's not used anywhere else. Okay, so TNT, nitrobenzene, and glycerol. Okay, so just TNT. Beautiful. Alrighty, so then we'll just place a pump on the front, set to import, interface, and of course they're forged, god damn it. So it takes nitric acid, and it takes sulfuric acid. Okay, let's finish up these chemical reactors. And so they're all plugged in and ready to go. Let's start with chlorobenzene. Okay, so let's try our fluid locking again. So we'll interface the things that we don't want, hydrochloric acid, and then we'll storage bus the ones we do want. Set to extract only, and this is good. All right, it's staying there. I like that. So now let's get nitrochlorobenzene. Beautiful. So diluted sulfuric acid, straight into the system, nitrochlorobenzene, storage bus. And we'll partition this storage bus as well. So now we should be able to request some dichlorobenzidazine. Wrong thing. 90 seconds. Yeah, I probably should have looked at that. That's okay. We're happy to wait. So let's get our diphenyl isophthalate going then. There it is, diphenyl isophthalate and diluted sulfuric acid. Straight into the system and then storage bus. So there we are, dichlorobenzidazine. We'll storage bus that, partition, and there it goes. And now diaminobenzidazine. Only 5 seconds. So storage bus the diaminobenzidazine. Let's make sure we fluid lock hydrochloric acid, interface, partition the storage, extract only. Let's plug it in. Okay, and here we are, PBI. And there we are, 5 seconds. Beautiful, there we are, liquid polybenzimidazole. This unlocks for us some great recipes such as the advanced SMDs. We can then use fusion casing all of our ZPM UV machine hulls, all of our computer parts, fusion glass, most of the assembly line, petri dishes for our living circuits, foils to make other things. It's just great. And on our plastics wall, let's set a PBI storage tank, place a super tank down, and that should do. Let's go check that this is going to work. So we're just going to place 2 interfaces on top. Beautiful, they've been sucked up, and there we are. It's in a tank, and we don't need to worry about it anymore. So this is going to whir away in the background while we leave it going for a little bit. But I have to say, I think that's this episode wrapped up nice and neatly. There isn't much else for us to do in the IV quest page. The only thing left to unlock is the other high-speed steels and the advanced SMDs. We've already broken our way into LUV quite nicely, so I think the next step is going to be making some LUV power, some of the rhodium-plated palladium, and then going for the assembly line. The assembly line is the gate to all late-game progress, and I can't wait to make it, but there'll be some things to shore up before then. And I'll be honest, I'm still a little worried about the tree that we cut down. I'm just really concerned that something bad is going to happen, and I don't really know what's going to happen. But you'll have to be in suspense for a little bit longer like I will be. And as always, if you like my stuff, the buttons are down below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and you turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads from me. With that all being said, bye-bye.